I love that. That's a tool right there, is asking yourself the questions. And because often the feedback is the behavior of the children, particularly young children, is the feedback is their behavior. So something's going in a way that's maybe challenging or out of control.
Yeah.
Asking those questions. Can you repeat those, what you said?
Can you feel it in your body?
Yes.
Or how does it make you feel? Or even my friend, I had this conversation with her the other day about emotion regulation, and she said, like, I really love bringing out the emotion chart, just like, and simply having like a board with like the different emotions and maybe a color for each emotion, and maybe, or like a facial expression for each emotion. And if kids have something to reference, and then they can be like, point to something, you understand them a little bit better, because as much as they might have an understanding of what the word angry is, they might actually just be confused. So they might say angry when they're actually confused. So if you give them something to look at or something to feel, you might be able to relate to them a little bit more as well.
Yes.
I definitely think the feelings charts, they're great.
Yeah. And I think it's quite common. I know for me, for my journey of having worked with children for over 15 years and being able to look back and see how alongside that journey of working with children, I've also been on my own inner journey of transformation and growth and development, right? And they've really worked hand in hand. And when I look back and see the way I used to work with children, the mindset I used to operate from, and the ways I used to be triggered to now, I mean, you know, there's always work to be done still, but the space I'm able to hold for children has deepened. And what I realized reflecting back is that being with children is actually the perfect opportunity to have those unresolved pieces within us triggered. It's not not that children trigger it. It's being with the children in all of their expressions, in all of their flavors and colors that trigger, you know, like the 3-year-old throwing a tantrum because, you know, you're setting the boundary that they need to put their shoes on to go outside. It triggers if you're feeling tense and frustrated, it's our own inner 3-year-old that had whatever happened at 3, where we were told to do something we didn't want to do.
I completely agree. Like, in the sense that, like, their complete unrepressed state brings us aware to the repression that we have on the inside. Like, completely. So, like, I've recently heard the phrase, triggers are your best friend, because it's like, as much as, yes, a trigger, it's something that we can go, oh, but that's inside of me. That's something I have to deal with. It's not an outside circumstance. Definitely with kids, though, like, the frustration of just like, it's time to go inside. No, it's not. And you're just like, or maybe it's not. It's not time. Maybe we can bring lunch outside.
Yes, exactly.
These
structures, these really rigid, firm structures that we learn to hold ourselves to, and children are here to challenge us, you know, to kind of break those walls down. And I think the reason it's so common to have those triggers come up when we're around children is because so much of our, I know trauma sounds like such a heavy word, but trauma doesn't have to be some really big, deep, you know, heavy event. Trauma can be actually something really simple, like, you know, being told you have to put on your shoes when you don't want to. And a lot of those traumas are mostly seeded in our childhood. So I think that's why it's so common, because I see it when I was in the classroom, teachers being triggered all the time. And the way I mean, granted, I haven't been in the classroom for 8 years, so maybe this has shifted slightly by now. But how often I would hear, exactly. How often I would hear teachers shouting just from that triggered state, and I'd be like, why is that inner work not an absolute, almost like mandated? I know.
Yeah, it baffles me. Like teachers that lose their cool, and it happens to all of us. It really does. Like, I think everyone loses their cool. But it always surprises me, like cranky teachers. I was just like, but like, didn't you get into this for the kids that you're now getting frustrated by? It's like, you kind of knew frustrating kids were part of the deal. You were in high school.
Exactly. You were probably frustrated by them too when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Yes. And when my mum would lose her, and yes, because we're still adult, I mean, we're still human. We need to acknowledge that we are going to lose our cool. We are going to have our triggers come up. We're not always going to have the perfect tools in place to manage that and come back to center. But it's what we do with it when we do lose it. It's what we do with it afterwards. It's how we follow up afterwards is also key for modeling to the children, because they learn by who we're being in each moment. And I remember when my mum would lose it and shout at us, not that it was often, but whenever it would happen, she would come and follow up with us, once she'd calm down herself, and actually apologize, for losing, for getting angry, for shouting, but then also still follow up on what was the behavior that led to it in the first place. Because what happens is when we lose it and get angry and try to tighten control or shout, it actually takes the focus off of the boundary you're trying to instill for their safety or whatever it is. And it takes it that gets lost. So they don't actually take any notice of the point in the first place, because you've gotten angry and made it about you being angry instead, right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like sometimes it's very little about the trauma, because we'll all go through things that are trauma, and people do things with the best intentions and don't realize that they're putting that on. But it's the aftermath when we realize that a line's been crossed or a boundary's been broken or not heard and caused us to get frustrated. It's the aftermath of how we can then resolve the situation that escalated. It's very little the escalated situation, because that's just life. Things escalate. Things go too fast for us, or like boil over and all this stuff, but it's how we can then clean up the mess that's been kind of like fuddled around with, like. And I completely agree. It's like beautiful that your mum would come back and apologize for overreacting, but then not lose that boundary that was trying to be set and trying to reinstill that lesson. It's really nice not to lose that. But acknowledge when you yourself have overstepped and need to take ownership for something. Beautiful.
And by saying, I'm like modeling explaining how we're feeling. I got really angry. It's not your fault. But like highlighting what we were feeling helps maybe children to identify when they're feeling angry. Oh, that's what it feels like.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.